Across the stars, humans were known by many names. Some called them warriors, others called them saviors, but to most alien worlds, they were dangerous. Stories told of their endless courage and their ability to survive even when everything was destroyed. They were said to be creatures of emotion, capable of both deep love and terrifying rage. When the Sarathian Empire signed a peace treaty with Earth, many celebrated, but behind the royal walls, there was fear, because part of that treaty included something old and traditional, an alliance by marriage. The chosen bride was Princess Lysera, youngest daughter of Empress Seraviel. Lysera was known for her grace, her silver eyes that shimmered like moonlight, and her gentle heart that hated conflict. Her people adored her for her kindness. But when the news reached her that she was to marry a human, the color drained from her face. The humans were still a mystery to the Sarathians. The stories told to her since childhood painted them as beings of fury, cold, brutal, and unfeeling in battle. And the man chosen for her marriage was said to be the worst of them all. His name echoed through the galaxy like a legend of war, Commander Nathan Cole, the man who ended the Zarethian conflict. He had been called the Iron Hand of humanity. The rumors said he destroyed enemy fleets without hesitation, and that he once fought on the surface of a burning planet for 3 days without rest. Some said he never smiled. Others whispered that he had lost everything and turned to war for comfort. No one truly knew, but everyone agreed on one thing: he was ruthless. Lysera sat alone in her chamber that night, the soft lights of the palace glowing around her. Her hands trembled as she looked at the holographic portrait sent from Earth. A man stood in the image, tall, strong, with eyes that seemed to pierce through the screen. A scar ran across his cheek, and his expression was unreadable. He did not look cruel, but there was something heavy in his face, like a memory that never left. Her maid Sari whispered nervously, "Your Highness, they say humans have hearts of stone. They fight for dominance, not peace." Lysera swallowed hard. Then why would they send one to marry me? Sari hesitated. Perhaps to show control, to remind the galaxy that even love can be a weapon. The words made Lysera's chest tighten. She turned away from the image and walked to the window. Outside, the twin moons of Sarathia floated side by side, their light washing over her pale face. She tried to imagine her future with a man who had seen more death than stars. Could someone who ended wars so brutally ever understand someone like her? Her mother, the Empress, entered the room later that evening. Her long robes shimmered like crystal. "My daughter," she said softly, "I see fear in your eyes." Lysera bowed her head. "Mother, they say this human kills without hesitation. How can I stand beside such a man?" The Empress placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Do not let the words of others shape your heart. I have met his kind. They are not beasts. They are unpredictable, yes, but sometimes in their unpredictability lies something pure." Lysera looked up. "Pure? Courage," her mother said simply, "and compassion. They burn with both." That night, as Lysera lay in her bed, her thoughts wouldn't rest. She imagined her wedding day standing beside a man she had never met. Would he look at her with warmth, or with the cold distance of a soldier? Would she be safe in his presence, or would she be just another political pawn in a game she didn't understand? Sleep never came easily. She dreamed of fire, of metal, of strange blue eyes that watched her from the shadows. When she awoke, her pillow was damp with tears. The next morning, the Royal Council announced that Commander Nathan Cole had accepted the invitation to Sarathia. He would arrive within 3 days to begin the alliance ceremony. Lysera's heart began to race. The whole palace buzzed with whispers. Servants prepared the grand hall, diplomats from both worlds arrived, and security doubled overnight. Every corner of the empire seemed to hold its breath. As the countdown to his arrival began, Lysera found herself standing again by the window staring at the sky. Somewhere beyond those stars, her future husband was traveling toward her. She pressed a hand to her chest and whispered to herself, "Please, let the stories be wrong." Let him not be the monster, they say. But deep inside, a quiet fear lingered, because stories, no matter how wild, always had a grain of truth. And if even part of what she'd heard was real, then the man she was about to meet was no fairy tale prince. He was the ruthless human, and soon he would be hers. The morning sky above Sarathia was painted in silver and gold when the human starship arrived. Its massive frame cut across the clouds like a dark blade, silent but powerful. People gathered in the palace courtyard to see it descend. Some stood in awe, others in fear. They had heard of humans but never seen one up close. Princess Lysera stood on the balcony beside her mother, watching the ship land. Her heart beat faster with every second. The moment she had been dreading was here. The door of the ship opened slowly, and from the thick mist stepped a tall figure in a dark blue uniform. His boots hit the marble ground with quiet confidence. Commander Nathan Cole. He didn't wear heavy armor or carry weapons as she expected. Instead, he looked simple, yet there was something about him that demanded respect. His hair was dark, short, a few strands falling across his forehead. His face was strong, marked with a faint scar that told stories of battles long past. But what caught Lysera's attention most were his eyes, calm, steady, almost sad. He bowed deeply before the Empress. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice firm but gentle, "it is an honor to stand on Sarathian ground." His voice wasn't rough or loud. It carried a strange warmth, like someone trying to speak softly in a world that only knew how to shout. Lysera felt a strange flutter inside her chest. She had imagined a monster, someone with a cold expression and sharp cruelty in his tone. But the man before her seemed tired, not terrifying. Still, she didn't let her guard down. Appearances could deceive. When the Empress gestured to her, Lysera stepped forward. Her silver gown shimmered as she moved, her veil hiding part of her face. Nathan looked at her for a long moment, then gave a small, polite nod. "Princess Lysera," he said softly, "I am grateful to finally meet you." She hesitated before replying. "Commander." Her voice trembled slightly. "Welcome to Sarathia." Their eyes met, and for a second everything around them fell silent. Nathan's gaze wasn't filled with arrogance or pride. It held patience, and something deeper, a quiet understanding. It felt as if he saw through her fear, as if he knew what it meant to be afraid. The Empress smiled politely. "Come," she said, breaking the silence. "We have prepared a feast in your honor." As they walked through the shining halls of the palace, Lysera stayed a step behind Nathan, studying him. He didn't look around with greed or suspicion. He admired the alien beauty of the palace, the floating lights, and the crystal walls. When servants passed by and bowed, he nodded to each of them in return. That small act shocked her. No royal guest had ever done that. During the dinner, she sat across from him at the long table. The hall glowed with golden chandeliers. Music played softly, and yet she could barely taste her food. She kept glancing at him. He spoke respectfully to the Empress, thanked the cooks, and answered questions from the council calmly. His words were thoughtful, never loud, never rude. Finally, he looked at her and asked gently, "Have you ever visited Earth, Princess?" Lysera blinked. "No. I have only read about it." He smiled faintly. "Then you must come one day. It's not as frightening as the stories make it sound." The words made her heart skip. It was as if he had read her thoughts. She didn't reply, just lowered her eyes, pretending to focus on her plate. But she could feel his gaze, curious, kind, but distant, like a man used to losing things he cared for. Later, after the feast ended, Lysera returned to her chamber. She couldn't stop thinking about him. The way he moved, the calm in his voice, the sadness in his eyes, it all felt so different from what she had feared. And yet she couldn't fully trust it. Maybe this was the mask he wore to fool her. Maybe the real ruthless commander still hid beneath that quiet face. She stood by her window, the cold wind brushing her cheeks. Down in the courtyard, she saw him walking alone, his shadow long under the moonlight. He stopped to look up at the stars as if searching for something far away. Lysra whispered softly to herself, "He doesn't look like a monster." But as the night deepened, her doubts returned. Stories don't change so easily. What if his gentleness was a trick? What if behind those calm eyes there was still the ruthless warrior who had destroyed entire fleets? Still, something deep in her heart whispered differently. Maybe the stories were only half true. And for the first time, Princess Lysra felt a strange, dangerous curiosity growing inside her, a desire to see who the real human behind the legend truly was. The next few days were slow and heavy inside the palace. Commander Nathan Cole was given his own royal quarters, close to the princess's chambers but not too close to break Sarathian customs. Every morning he attended meetings with the Empress and the Royal Council, speaking politely about trade, peace routes, and defense systems. He was respectful, calm, and patient, nothing like the ruthless image the galaxy believed in, but Princess Lysra still kept her distance. She would often see him walking through the palace gardens, talking to advisors or observing the alien architecture with quiet fascination. He always looked thoughtful, never demanding, never harsh. Yet the fear inside her heart refused to die completely. She couldn't forget the stories of what he had done during the war, how he led his fleet through fire, how he defeated armies without mercy. Could such a man truly be kind? One evening, the Empress arranged a private dinner for just the two of them. Lysra was nervous as she entered the royal dining room. The candles glowed softly and gentle music played in the background. Nathan stood when she arrived, a small gesture of respect that surprised her. "Princess," he greeted, bowing slightly. "Commander," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. They sat across from each other, and for a moment there was only silence. The air was thick with awkwardness. Lysra lowered her gaze, playing with the edge of her cup. Nathan finally spoke, his tone soft and careful. "I sense you are not comfortable around me," he said. Lysra froze. She looked up, meeting his calm blue eyes. "It's not discomfort," she lied weakly. He gave a small, sad smile. "You don't have to pretend. I've seen that look before, fear. It's in your eyes every time I enter a room." Her throat tightened. She didn't know what to say. The honesty in his words made her heart ache. He wasn't angry. He sounded almost hurt. "I've heard many things about humans," she said finally. "That you are dangerous. That you do not value life the way we do." Nathan sighed, leaning back slightly. "I know what they say. And maybe they're not wrong. We've done terrible things. But most of us, most humans, fight because we have to, not because we want to." Lysra frowned. "You ended wars, Commander. Millions died because of your orders." His eyes darkened. For a moment the calmness cracked and she saw the weight he carried behind it. "Yes," he whispered. "And I remember every single one of them. That's why I fight, to make sure it never happens again." The room fell silent again. Lysra felt a sting of guilt in her chest. She had imagined him proud of his victories, boasting of his strength. But the man sitting before her looked nothing like that. He looked tired, like someone who carried the ghosts of his past everywhere he went. "You don't look like someone who enjoys war," she said quietly. Nathan gave a faint smile. "Enjoy it? No. But sometimes peace is born from people who've seen too much of war." The words touched her deeply. She looked at him for a long time, studying his face. There was pain there, but also kindness. There was strength, but also gentleness. It was confusing. The ruthless human was turning into something else before her eyes, something painfully human. When he reached across the table trying to take her hand, she hesitated. For a heartbeat, their fingers almost touched, but fear won again. She pulled back. Nathan froze, then slowly withdrew his hand. "I understand," he said softly. "You don't have to trust me yet." His voice was calm, but she saw the quiet sadness behind it. It hurt her in a way she couldn't explain. That night, Nathan didn't attend the palace dinner or the council meeting. He spent the evening alone on the balcony outside his quarters, looking at the stars. From her own room, Lysra saw him standing there, motionless, with the silver light of the moons falling on his face. Something inside her shifted. She realized she didn't want him to feel lonely, even though she didn't yet understand him. Later, lying in her bed, she couldn't sleep. His words replayed in her mind again and again. "I fight so it never happens again." For the first time, Her fear began to mix with curiosity and something softer. Something dangerous, maybe, she thought. The ruthless human wasn't made of cruelty. Maybe he was made of sorrow and courage. And without knowing why, Princess Lysera whispered into the darkness, "Perhaps I judged you too quickly, Nathan Cole." Days turned into weeks, and the palace slowly settled into a new rhythm with the human guest living among them. At first, everyone kept their distance. Servants spoke in whispers, guards watched him closely, and even the royal council avoided direct questions. But Nathan never complained. He walked the palace halls quietly, as if he belonged to another world entirely. Princess Lysera, from her balcony, often found herself watching him. She told herself it was out of curiosity, not interest, but her eyes always searched for him. She noticed small things that others didn't. He always helped when someone dropped something. He thanked everyone who served him, and when he passed by the palace gardens, he would stop to admire the strange glowing flowers that only bloomed under Sarathia's moons. One morning she followed him secretly. He left the main palace and walked toward the lower district, the part where workers and servants lived. Lysera wrapped herself in a light cloak, hiding her royal identity, and followed at a safe distance. What she saw changed everything. Nathan was kneeling beside a group of alien children, their skin pale blue, their eyes bright with laughter. He wasn't giving orders or boasting about wars. He was repairing a small toy robot for them. His hands moved carefully, and when the robot started to blink and walk again, the children cheered. Nathan smiled, a real smile, soft and gentle, not the polite kind he gave in meetings. A young alien boy tugged his sleeve and asked, "Are you a warrior?" Nathan chuckled quietly. "I was," he said, "but I prefer fixing things now." "Did you ever fight monsters?" the child asked again. He paused for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "Yes, I fought many monsters. Some of them were enemies," he said softly, "and some of them were inside me." Lysera's heart tightened at those words. She could hear the sadness behind them. He wasn't proud of his battles, he was haunted by them. Later, Nathan helped carry boxes of medicine into a nearby shelter. He spoke to the caretakers with respect, and even helped clean the dusty floor. Lysera couldn't believe what she was seeing. This was the ruthless human commander the galaxy feared, a man who bowed to workers, who played with children, who stayed late just to fix broken machines. She stepped closer, hiding behind a column as she watched him wipe sweat from his brow. One of the caretakers, an old alien woman, smiled and said, "You have a good heart, human." Nathan smiled sadly. "I just try to do what I can. I've done enough harm already." The woman placed a hand on his arm. "Then you are healing, child. Every kind act heals a little." Something inside Lysera shifted completely. For the first time, she didn't see the face of a soldier. She saw a man who carried pain and yet chose kindness. A man who had seen too much darkness but still searched for light. That night, when she returned to the palace, she couldn't stop thinking about him. His smile, his gentleness, his quiet sorrow. It made her chest ache in a way she couldn't explain. She went to the royal library, searching for human history. She read their struggles, their wars, their sacrifices. The more she read, the more she understood they were not monsters. They were survivors. The next morning, when she saw Nathan in the garden, she gathered her courage and approached him for the first time without hesitation. "Commander," she called softly. He turned, surprised but calm. "Princess Lysera." He bowed politely. "Is everything all right?" She nodded. "I wanted to thank you." He frowned slightly. "For what?" "For helping our people," she said. "For repairing machines, for visiting the shelters. You didn't have to do those things." Nathan looked away for a moment, his voice low. "When I fight, I destroy. When I build or help, I feel human again. It reminds me of what I'm supposed to protect." Lysera's throat tightened. "You carry so much pain," she whispered. He gave a small smile. "Don't we all?" For the first time, Lysera smiled back. It was faint but real. Something warm passed between them. Something fragile but true. When she left the garden that day, her fear was gone. What replaced it was something she had not expected. Admiration. She realized that the man she once called Ruthless was the gentlest soul she had ever met, and that realization scared her even more because now she wasn't afraid of him. She was afraid for him, afraid that a heart so kind could still be broken by a world that didn't understand it. And deep in her heart, Princess Lysra began to feel something she had never known before. A quiet, growing affection for the human who carried the weight of his past, and still smiled through it. The palace slept peacefully under the twin moons of Sarathia. The air was calm, the gardens glowing faintly with silver light. It was a night of beauty and danger hiding beneath it. Deep within the shadows, silent figures crept across the marble courtyards. Their armor shimmered like liquid metal, their eyes glowing red. They were assassins from the rival Draven faction, sworn enemies of the Empress, sent to end the new human-Sarathian alliance before it could begin. Princess Lysra had stayed awake longer than usual that night. Her mind refused to rest. She kept thinking about Nathan, his words, his kindness, his sadness. Every time she closed her eyes, his voice echoed softly in her memory. "When I build or help, I feel human again." Those words had touched something deep inside her heart. Outside her window, she heard a sound, a faint clang of metal. Her body tensed. It wasn't the sound of the night guards. It was sharper, quieter, like a blade being drawn. Before she could move, the lights in her chamber flickered and went out. Darkness swallowed the room. Lysra froze, her breath caught in her throat. She heard footsteps, light but fast, coming closer. Suddenly, the door burst open. 3 assassins in black armor stormed in, their weapons glowing blue. "Find the princess," one hissed. Lysra backed away, her heart racing. "Guards!" she screamed, but her voice echoed unanswered. The palace alarms hadn't been triggered yet. They had cut the power. One of the assassins lunged toward her, blade raised. Lysra stumbled, falling to the floor as fear gripped her. Just as the blade came down, another sound filled the room. A deep, sharp clang followed by the crash of metal against stone. Nathan was there. He moved like lightning, his body a blur of motion. His eyes burned with focus, and his voice was low and deadly calm. "Get away from her!" The assassins turned toward him, but it was too late. Nathan was already moving. He grabbed the first one's wrist, twisted it sharply, and the weapon fell. His other hand came up, slamming into the attacker's chest with brutal force. The assassin flew backward, hitting the wall with a crash. The second one swung a blade, but Nathan dodged, grabbed the assassin's arm and pulled him forward, kneeing him in the stomach. The final one fired a plasma dart, but Nathan turned, shielding Lysra with his own body. The shot hit his shoulder, searing through his uniform. He didn't even flinch. Lysra gasped. "You're hurt!" He ignored the pain and charged forward, tackling the last assassin to the ground. With quick, precise movements, he disarmed and knocked them unconscious. The room fell silent again, except for Lysra's ragged breathing. Nathan stood there for a moment, panting softly, the moonlight reflecting off the sweat and blood on his face. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice hoarse. Lysra's eyes filled with tears. I think so. But your shoulder." He looked down, saw the burn, and gave a faint smile. "It's nothing. I've had worse." She ran to him, ignoring the fear that had once kept her distant. Her hand shook as she tried to press a cloth against his wound. "You protected me," she whispered. "You could have died." Nathan's expression softened. "That's what I promised, to protect peace. And you are part of that peace, Princess." Her heart twisted painfully. This man, this so-called ruthless human, had faced death without hesitation, not for glory or duty, but simply to keep her safe. She looked up at him, her eyes trembling. "You risked your life for me." He gave a small, tired smile. "That's what humans do when something matters." Outside, alarms finally began to sound as guards rushed in. The Empress arrived moments later, shocked to see her daughter in Nathan's arms, blood staining his uniform. "What happened?" she demanded. Nathan straightened, standing tall despite his injury. "Assassins. They came for the princess. They won't return." The Empress's eyes softened as she looked at him. "You have our deepest gratitude, Commander." Nathan bowed respectfully. "Just doing my duty, Your Majesty." But when his gaze met Lysra's again, it wasn't duty that passed between them. It was something far more powerful. Gratitude, admiration, and something unspoken that neither dared to name. Later, as healers tended to his wound, Lysra stayed by his side. She refused to leave the room, even when the Empress suggested she rest. When Nathan opened his eyes and saw her sitting beside him, her hand gently resting on his, he whispered, "You shouldn't worry about me." Her voice trembled. "I will worry. Because now you're not just the man from the treaty, you're the man who saved my life. Nathan's lips curved in a weak smile. Then I'm glad I was here. As the night faded into dawn, Lizera watched the sunlight touch his face and realized the truth she had been denying for so long. The ruthless human was not a monster. He was a man who carried his pain quietly, who fought with courage and who protected with love. And for the first time, her heart no longer feared him. It longed for him. The palace was quiet after the attack. Days passed, yet the memory of that night still lingered in every hallway and whispered through every shadow. The guards were doubled, the gates reinforced, and every noble whispered the same thing, how the human had saved the princess. But inside the royal healing chamber, the story was much softer. Nathan lay on a white bed, his shoulder wrapped in glowing healing fabric. He looked calm, but his eyes carried the quiet pain of someone used to wounds, both on his body and in his heart. Princess Lysera visited him every day. At first, she came only to thank him, to show her gratitude. But soon she came just to see him breathe, to hear his quiet voice when he spoke her name. The healers always smiled secretly when they saw her enter with a bowl of soup or a folded cloth. That morning she walked in with a tray of food. "You didn't eat breakfast again," she said softly. Nathan opened his eyes and smiled faintly. "I wasn't hungry. You said that yesterday," she replied, putting the tray down. "Humans need food to heal, do they not?" He chuckled quietly, a sound that made her chest feel warm. "Yes, princess, but I've healed from worse with less." Lysera sat beside him, folding her hands in her lap. "You always say that," she murmured. "Like you don't value your own life." Nathan turned his head toward her, his expression gentle but distant. "I do value it, but I've spent most of my years fighting wars. Out there you learn to accept that any day could be your last." Lysera's throat tightened. She could see the truth in his eyes. Years of loneliness, loss, and sacrifice hidden behind that calm face. "You shouldn't live like that anymore," she whispered. "You're not in war now." He looked at her for a long moment, then smiled softly. "No, not when you're around." Her heart skipped a beat. For a second, neither of them spoke. The silence was filled only by the soft hum of healing crystals. Then Lysera reached out slowly, her fingers brushing against his bandaged hand. "When I first heard I was to marry a human," she said in a trembling voice, "I was terrified. I imagined someone cruel, someone cold. But then you came, and you risked your life for me without hesitation." Nathan looked down at her hand resting on his. "I didn't do it for a treaty," he said quietly. "I did it because I couldn't bear to see you hurt." Lysera's breath caught. His words were simple, but they sank into her heart like light breaking through darkness. "You mean that?" He nodded once, his eyes holding hers. "I've seen enough pain in my life. I couldn't let it touch you." For a moment she wanted to speak, but emotion closed her throat. She simply sat there, her hand still holding his. Hours passed as they talked. About Earth, about Sarathia, about dreams and fears. Nathan told her how humans once looked at the stars and dreamed of peace, not conquest. Lysera shared stories of her childhood, her lonely days in the palace, her fear of never being truly understood. And slowly, the distance between them faded. By the time the evening sun painted the room in gold, Nathan could sit up without wincing. Lysera helped him adjust the pillow behind his back. "Better?" she asked. He smiled. "Much," she smiled back, but her eyes shimmered. "When I saw you fight that night, I thought you were unstoppable. But now, I see you're human in every way. You bleed, you hurt, you smile." Nathan's voice was low, almost a whisper. "And you make me feel alive again, princess." The words made her heart flutter. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not out of duty, not out of formality, but out of truth. Lysera stood slowly, walking toward the window. Outside, the stars began to shine. "Do you think," she asked softly, "our worlds can ever truly understand each other?" Nathan watched her, the soft glow of the stars reflecting in her silver hair. "I think understanding begins with two people willing to try," he said. She turned to him, her eyes gentle and full of unspoken emotion. "Then maybe it begins with us." Nathan looked at her, his heart thudding in his chest. For the first time in years, he felt something other than duty. He felt warmth, hope, and something dangerously close to love. As night wrapped around the palace, Lysera stayed a little longer, sitting beside his bed until his eyes grew heavy with sleep. Before she left, she leaned closer and whispered, "Rest well, Nathan. The galaxy feels a little safer when you're here." And for the first time since the war, Nathan slept peacefully, because now he wasn't just a soldier on a distant world. He was a man who had found something worth living for. The royal council chamber was filled with whispers. Every noble, every minister, every advisor had gathered to witness the decision that would shape the future of two worlds. The banners of Sarathia hung proudly beside the human flag, and at the center of the hall sat the Empress herself. Calm, regal, unreadable, Princess Lysira stood at her side, her silver gown shimmering like moonlight, yet her heart raced wildly beneath it. For weeks she had carried a secret storm inside her, a mix of fear, love, and truth. The treaty between humanity and Sarathia was ready to be sealed. The final act was simple. Lysira's formal agreement to marry Commander Nathan Hale, the man humans called the Ruthless Protector. But she knew now that name was wrong. He was not ruthless. He was kind, brave, gentle when the world was cruel. Nathan stood at the edge of the hall, dressed in ceremonial armor that glowed faintly with silver light. His shoulder was healed, though a faint scar remained, a silent reminder of the night he saved her life.